Welcome to the Empowered Spirit Show. This is your host, Terri Heiman. I'll explore the connection to the human spirit in a way that helps to navigate your life, including crisis. I am passionate about helping you to open up to your intuition and the metaphysical world of spirit to find your confidence in your own inner guidance. Take a pause, be inspired, learn ways to show up focused, centered, and more dynamic in your everyday life. Welcome back to the Empowered Spirit Show. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me today. We're in the midst of a seasonal transition with lots of cosmic forces going on. The fall will bring in lots of change and lots of forward motion. Everything around us is shifting in vibration, and it's easy to get stuck. But as you take control of your energy, you will understand that you can be a master to it. All of this I talk about on my Energy Focus for the week, which you can find the replay on my website or tune in on Sundays on Facebook and Instagram Live. I offer information about the cosmos, how it affects your energy, and we align our focus energetically together. We look at the cards for guidance for the week, and you can bring your questions. Join me. And if you aren't in my Facebook group, the Empowered Spirit Circle, I would love to invite you in. The link is in the show notes. With so much stress in the world, finding tools and techniques to rest, to pause, and be aware of your energy is so important. If you are in need of help or guidance or feel inspired to learn more about your own spiritual practice, reach out. Download my free gift to help you get started. You can find it on my website, terriannheiman.com. It's a guide, 5 simple steps to setting up a spiritual practice. Or if you would prefer some private help, join me in my Empowered Spirit program. Schedule an Empowered Spirit Discovery session with me, and let's discover the things that are draining you of your energy and the number one thing you can do to empower and trust your inner guidance. As we transition into a new season, here on the Empowered Spirit Show, we open up with a new podcast series, a series all about intuition and how intuition can help you in your life, help you to know your energy better, help you to make better decisions, help you to trust your gut instincts. We all have this ability, but we do have to train it. So we will be talking to lots of people who have various experiences with their own intuitive abilities that has led them to the work that they are now doing. Before we jump into today's episode, let's just take a moment to pause and to center our energy. Wherever you are, if you can, close your eyes. Begin to release all the excess chatter of the mind. Take a nice deep inhale and then exhale it out. Beginning to call in your energy, calling in your higher self, call in your spiritual body, aligning the spiritual body right on top of the physical body, shoulders and shoulders, hips and hips. Feel your aura pulling in. Feel yourself connecting with Mother Earth. Feel yourself slowing down. In the medicine wheel, we find it turning and turning, as does your life. We anchor in all of the directions, to the north, the south, the east, and the west, above us, below us, right into your very center, connecting with your spirit. Inhaling and exhaling, grounding. Calming. Taking one more deep breath. Centering. Coming back. Blinking the eyes open as you're ready. Sarah Weiss, MA, LMT, is the founder of the SpiritHeal Institute and the Enlightened Path training program. She initiates and helps cultivate self-empowerment, an awakened heart, and trustworthy intuition in her clients and students. She is a practical mystic and recognized teacher in the Sufi path, the Adrian Crow tradition, and the Taoist lineage. Sarah serves as a healer, spiritual mentor, medical intuitive, and retreat guide, illuminating the path for those who are called to discover the light, depth, and power of the heart. Additionally, Sarah is an adjunct professor at Baldwin Wallace University, teaching meditation and mindfulness to music, theater, and business students. Let us welcome Sarah to the show. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, Terri. Thanks for having me share this time with you and your audience.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. Your work looks really great, very interesting. And so as we start this series and move into it, I'd like to kind of ask the first question of, how has intuition helped you in your professional life?
It's very interesting because I was born intuitive. I had more intuitive awareness as even a baby and a child than cognitive analytical awareness. And all my life, I've actually had to develop more of the kind of cognitive analytical awareness and learn how to balance the two in my life. And so many of your listeners may actually have had that when they were growing up, but didn't know what to call it or didn't have words for it. So I was always artistic and, on the kind of right brain side of the spectrum. So intuitively, I worked with my art as a professional artist and teacher at the college level in art. And alongside of that, I was always developing my healing abilities and studying the metaphysical aspects of life. So intuition has been the thread for everything in my life. Now, I've been working as a medical intuitive for over 30 years professionally, and I didn't expect to do that. I was teaching art and being an artist, and I love that. And then an event happened that changed everything.
So let me just stop for a moment and ask a couple of questions, Sarah. So first off, when you say you knew that and you were born as a child, so when you were little and you were picking up this information, you were aware that you were intuitive even as a little child without anybody telling you?
Yes. I remember being in my crib talking to the light beings. I remember the day that my mother came into focus as she leaned over the crib, and I shifted from the world of light and frequency to this 3D reality. And I had this part of me that was probably sourced from my spirit guides that said, don't let go of this awareness of the light side. No matter what you do in your life, don't forget this. And I always had reminders. Yes, I remember everything.
And you remembered that. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Because, I was intuitive as a kid too, but I didn't know it. And I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know that people weren't like me. So I struggled in that realm of not knowing what was going on and having it shut down so often by, hearing the message, don't be so sensitive, all that. But to actually know that as a child and then to start really trusting that, that's really amazing. That's really interesting.
Well, I have to give credit to my guides because I could have easily forgotten it. But then every night was a journey where they took me off and were teaching and reminding me. And I was involved in a lot of light temple work early on as a child. And I remember being taken through the portals and these tunnels through the different star portals into these different realms where we held ceremony as light beings. And so I always had this belief that everyone was being healed or could be healed. And it was always in contrast to the negativity around me and the depression. And people may not have thought they were depressed or negative, but compared to the realms of light, the average person on this planet, if they're not aware of that, are fairly heavy in their consciousness. So to me, they looked very encumbered and weighted down, burdened. And I always thought, well, there's this other world you could be aware of. And so I always lived with that awareness. I was always frustrated because I wanted people to know this.
What did your parents think?
Well, it's interesting because my parents were basically atheists. They didn't believe in any form of God. They didn't believe in an afterlife or anything like that. But I had a grandfather, my mother's father, who was a medical doctor, and he was an internist, and he was known in Cleveland for being able to diagnose patients immediately, like in a second. And he was renowned for that in this area. So people were taking, other doctors were referring patients to him all the time. Well, when I was about 10, he had a huge stroke, and he was living off machines and kind of in a vegetative state for a couple of years. And we were basically in communication during that time. And it was during the time when you couldn't take children into the hospital rooms without extra permission. And my mother would take us down to the hospital, and my sister and I would sit in the waiting room down on the first floor. And I would go into these states where I'd be communicating with him. And he would be talking to me about his patients as if he was still working on them. And so then he passed, and I was still developing this multidimensional reality consciousness. And then when I was 27, he came to me in a vision and opened the top of my head like you would open a teapot, just take the top off. And he poured his whole being into me in terms of the medical intuitive skill. And I literally woke up the next morning as a medical intuitive. It happened overnight.
That's pretty fascinating. What is a medical intuitive? I haven't really talked about that too much on the show. What is a medical intuitive?
Okay, so medical intuitive helps someone understand the body, mind, spirit connection of whatever symptoms they have going on in their body. So if Carolyn Mace is probably the most famous medical intuitive, and people probably know her name. So she takes it from this perspective of the body, mind, spirit, the consciousness of the chakras, and understanding yourself from this whole person perspective. So I have that. In addition, I also do internal viewing for people, which is a version of remote viewing where I can go project my consciousness inside someone's body and actually look at the tissues, actually look at the organs and the blood, and take a look at what's going on, in addition to adding information about the energy field and how the energy is blocked or flowing in a certain way. And then also I receive information that rolls out like on a video screen of what the history of that person was or is, and how that relates to their illness or symptom that they're having currently. So, for instance, someone told me today that they had a surgery 35 years ago, and she didn't even remember she had the surgery, and she was calling me about something that was kind of related to that surgery. But when I went into her field to see what was the source of the problem she's having now, which was a foot problem, and it took me back to that surgery. I said, "Did you ever have surgery on this foot before?" She hadn't even remembered. We forget these things. And so we put together a picture of the whole being of where was the source on the physical plane, what's active on the emotional level. She was also very angry at her husband and wanted to kick. You could see in her energy field, she just wanted to give him a good swift kick. And then her feeling of not being able to move ahead in her life, because if she moved ahead and her husband was miserable, she would feel guilty about it. So we put together a whole medical intuitive picture for someone to help them understand their physical symptoms, their emotional involvement, their spiritual path. And it's a very comprehensive picture of how, of giving someone an understanding of what's happening in their life currently.
So you do like an intuitive reading, but you're actually looking at the medical condition of them.
Yes. So with my grandfather's blessing, I opened up to all this medical work, which I never even thought about, right? I mean, I was an artist.
Yeah, I mean, I was an artist too. And I did actually have studied with Carolyn Mason, had several workshops with her. And I do feel like she was one of my first teachers, her and Norm Shealy, who I love, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really had the medical background. Did you have to have any medical background to do this? Or is this what you're feeling like you got from your grandfather?
Well, it's really interesting. I actually then, after I received that from my grandfather, went and took a licensed massage therapy program and became a licensed massage therapist, which I never did in my life. But it gave me the anatomy and physiology and understanding of the body on a medical level. And then as I've been working as a medical intuitive, I have friends who are doctors, nurses, and medical people, therapists. And I'm always asking them questions. I'm saying, I just saw this in someone's body. What do you think it is? And I get taught. I feel like I've gone to medical school, to psychology school, to nursing school. I've learned so much over the years.
Yeah, I can imagine that you have. And I know for me, I kind of shut down that ability because I didn't have the medical training, and I went more into like emotional freedom, looking at the emotions because I have such a huge emotional body and the empathic energy and the intuitive energy. But it is very fascinating. Carolyn Mace was an awesome teacher, and the way that she would get her readings, I imagine the same goes for you.
Right. And the empathic involvement in the physical issues is really fascinating. So every time I do a medical intuitive reading, I also need to know about the people around them, because I have so many people that show symptoms that are really someone else's symptoms that they're exhibiting in their own body because they're so sensitive and so highly empathic. And
it's crazy, right? It's crazy.
It's really crazy. And it's so prevalent. I mean, it's really hard to sort out sometimes whose symptom is whose.
Yeah. Which is why I teach what I teach, helping people to understand their own energy. Like, what is my energy? And then once I know my energy, I can tell what's not my energy. But we have to start somewhere by learning this. Otherwise, I imagine, as you're seeing, people come up with all kinds of ailments and don't know where it's coming from or what's going on.
Right. And, Carolyn Mace went down this path really quickly early in her career about teaching people how to work with their own energy, because it doesn't help anyone to make them reliant on someone else like us.
Right.
And so I also I've always taught classes on energy and helping people awaken their subtle perception, understand the symbology of what they perceive and their dreams and all the ways they can receive intuitive information. So really my goal, and even in a session, I tune people into what I'm experiencing so that they can experience it too. So it's not just a one-way session. We're talking, interacting, and I'm teaching them how to ground their energy, how to feel energy flow, how to be connected to Mother Earth, which to me is the most important thing you can teach someone.
I so agree. Yep. Connecting to Mother Earth for sure. I do a lot of my own personal work out at the medicine wheel and grounding with Mother Earth. It's so important. It just helps us to learn so much more about who we are and that connection. I mean, just going through the loss of my mom, first my dad and then my mom, it just makes me realize like, wow, here I am. But the more I connect with Mother Earth, the more I don't feel that loneliness, the more that I do feel that oneness with all. And that's really important.
Right.
Isolation is a hard thing. And many people go down that path feeling so isolated and alone and pull themselves out. And then illness comes from there.
It does. Wow. I believe that losing your awareness of your connection to Mother Earth is the first stage of dissociation from self. That truth of our being is that we are connected to Mother Earth, but we forget about that. And we forget about what a resource she is. and how much we are intricately connected with her. I don't believe that our consciousness is meant to be separated from that awareness.
Yeah, I so agree. I really do. And I know when I feel like I am separated or isolated alone, that's exactly where I go. Up to the medicine wheel, connect with Mother Earth. What is she telling me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really important. And I see one of your ebooks is all about grounding. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. So when I was 19, I was studying photography and printmaking in art school, and I went out to a park and I was going to photograph in the woods. And I got out of my car. I stepped off the parking lot cement onto the grass leading to the path, and my feet got stuck to the ground. It was like wearing moon boots. I could not move. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice talking to me, and it's Mother Earth. And she's here to tell me that she exists, that she and I are working together, that she'll always be there for me. And she surrounded me in this incredible love that was just boundless. And I was stuck there for 20 minutes. I couldn't move as she's filling me with this incredible energy and speaking to me. And the last thing she said to me was, walk softly on this earth. You and I have to walk in love together.
Beautiful.
And since that time, I have focused. Every time I have a moment, I have focused to returning to that connection and making sure that's still alive, that my feet are still connected to the ground, and that she and I are working together. So every time I'm in a session, the very first thing we do is I lead someone in a grounding to reconnect with Mother Earth. Because when that energy comes up, it clears their field, and everything that we need to know and understand becomes available then. So every single session, we spend time grounding. And in fact, before a session, I send someone a link to a grounding meditation so that they do it before the session, and it gets them settled down and ready to do the session.
So important. It really is to ground that energy and to be connected to that force that really feeds us. It really is. So I definitely agree with all of that for sure. So let me ask you a question. If you were born as a natural intuitive, do you have to practice, or do you just depend on your natural abilities?
No, I realized when I was about in high school that I had to learn how to shape and become more skillful and masterful with the energies and my intuitive ability.
Hey, that's the answer I was looking for. And I think it's important that our listeners hear that even if we are born intuitively, even if we are born knowing that we have the gifts, we still have to practice. We still have to bring form and shape to it.
Absolutely. It's actually something that I do believe everyone has and has access to. And yet, without mastery and daily practice, it's so easy for that intuition to get clouded over. And if you want your intuition to be reliable, you have to practice working with your energy, clearing, recognizing what your energy, like you said, what your energy is and what your energy is, who's you're not. You have to know that, and you have to know where to come back to, where the clarity is. And that takes, I compare it to learning, an instrument, a sport. It's something that requires daily practice and going through the levels of integration into your life the same way if you were learning an instrument or an art or a sport. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's natural and I just have it, but they don't train it. And then they wonder, and they're pulling in tons of information and leaving themselves wide open. So even as someone that knows from a very early age, yes, I think it's important. We still have to train. We still have to practice. And a lot of it just comes with meditation and being still and being quiet. And as you've already stated, listening and hearing and seeing and knowing all of those intuitive abilities coming forward. Yeah.
It's really important. And as you just mentioned, being open to energies that you wouldn't want to participate in, let's just say, you have to learn what it's like to have your boundaries on your energy field. And you have to know what it's like to have personal boundaries and be willing to speak your truth, whether someone doesn't like it or not. Because if you're intuitive and you're empathic and you don't speak your truth, what ends up happening is you betray yourself, and in that self-betrayal, all this flood of external heavy energy comes into you. The minute you betray your own truth, you leave yourself open to whatever is around and available to invade you. So I feel like from the personality level up, you have to have these very strong boundaries, and you have to be very clear with yourself and honest with yourself, which you referred to being emotional. I'm very emotional too. I think most empaths are. And learning how to work with the energy of your emotions so that you transmute it into light and clarity and clear messages from your intuition. It's very important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is very important. And there is a fine line. And, I know also too, like Carolyn Mace teaches too, we do have a responsibility to that information that we're seeing, and finding that where is that responsibility on what we say and see and know, right? It's also comes with training. And I think that it is, again, I can't say it enough for the person that wants to be more intuitive, that wants to understand more of their empathic gifts and nature, that training and sitting still and being quiet and putting a format to it is the best thing they can do. It really is.
Really is. What I studied in three main paths. One was the Sufi path, one was the Taoist path, and one was the Andean shamanic path. And every single one of them required that I do daily practice. Every single one of them.
Yeah, and it's so important to hear. Did you do a lot of twirling?
I have done the dervish twirling in my life. I don't know if I do it now, but I have done that. But mostly the Sufi work is mantra work, and then the Taoist work is working with the earth and heaven energies through Qigong, and then the Andean energy is the practices are very similar to the Qigong energy. They're always working with transmuting energy through earth and heaven and turning it into lighter versus heavy energy. So I love those practices.
Yeah, those are great for sure. And those are the formation of so many things. It really is. Yeah. I know for me, it's like with Reiki, and the Reiki brings in some of that Qigong, the energy medicine. And then I, by my own natural bloodlines, have, the Native American energy. And that's where like the medicine wheel and the sweat lodges, the labyrinth, that's just like part of my own medicine. Yeah. And so I kind of have always taken that for granted, but it is part of who I am. And then the other work, the emotional freedom technique, and some of the other techniques that I work with, they just all blend together so nicely. And they're all coming from the same source, right? They're all coming from the same way of how we can learn to tap into this universal energy.
Oh my God, it's so abundant. And if you actually study in depth one system, it opens up every other system to you. If you actually master one and really do it, all of a sudden, it's just translatable to many other systems. But we are really fortunate now with the way the teachings are coming through the air, through the water, through the land. I mean, if you connect and you learn how to connect with clarity, the teachings are coming directly to you. It's really beautiful now.
It is. And the more I practice, the more I study, the greater it becomes. And that's just the key right there, is making it a priority. And I know we're all busy, and I hear this all the time. I'm too busy to sit still. Oh, I don't know if it's for me. I can't. this is what we need. This is how we do it.
Right. And in your podcast, I love how you tell people that sitting for, 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day changes everything in your life, that it's an active way of doing something quietly that is so transformative for the rest of your life. You say that in all your podcasts.
And it is so true. This morning I was in a Kundalini class over here at Birmingham Yoga, and there was a woman that started meditating early. And we go around setting intentions. She's like, I started meditating. I wake up and meditate first, and it has changed my life. And it's like, yeah, there you go. Because people say sometimes, well, why do I need to wake up and meditate? Don't I need to do something first? It's like, no, get it fresh from the start. Set your day. And the more you come to that, the more you'll start to notice what those shifts are.
It's really important. In one of my classes now, I have people on a 30-minute, 30-day practice. And it's the first time in their life that they committed to actually doing a practice every single day. And only 14 days into it, they're seeing remarkable changes in how they are during a day. Remarkable.
It is remarkable. So I see that you teach out at Eshland. Tell us about that. Eshland, what a beautiful place.
It is a beautiful place. It started in the late 60s. It's in Big Sur, California. And it originally started arising out of the Gestalt movement in the 60s, and a place where people could gather for consciousness raising activities. And they have developed true to their roots. They've stayed rooted in the earth and rooted with the elements there. It's, first of all, the most gorgeous place that you can imagine, hanging off the side of a beautiful mountain with the ocean right below you. And they offer incredible classes. So I am teaching a class there with a psychologist, emancipating the soul from trauma's grasp. And we are working with energy, with EMDR work, and a lot of energy work to help people become free from the traumas that are binding them. And we actually spend a whole week with the group without ever discussing their trauma history. The goal there is to come into a new consciousness about who you are and how free you truly are, how you really are a sovereign soul. And the more you can experience that through the energy work and through the EMDR work, which is a group EMDR release techniques, the more you unconsciously release that trauma without working. So we focus on the positive, we focus on the shifting of the energy field and the awareness into the light, and the trauma drops away. And it's a really beautiful way of working. So we don't let people get caught up in the story of their trauma from the very beginning. So it's a 5-day workshop, and it's being held at the end of September at Esalen this year.
Excellent. Yeah. My sister in New Jersey, she's a clinical psychologist and works with the EMDR, and it is advanced a lot in where it first started from.
It's really an amazing technique. Yes. At first, it was first developed to help returning vets from war, and it was the eye movement desensitization process. We use a lot of audio EMDR modality, where there's a flooding of audio that is specially made so that it works with both sides of the brain and releases the trauma patterns technically from the brain.
Yeah, I work with sound bowls. I'm not trained in EMDR. I'm not a psychologist, but still the sound and the healing and all of that can definitely shift us, definitely.
I know I say the only instrument I can play are the singing bowls.
Right? Same here, and I love them.
Right.
I play the crystal bowls mostly, yeah. So who is your client? Like who do you work with? What population?
I work with everyone. I work with people who have medical issues, psychological issues, spiritual issues. I work with children, but I work with them through their mothers. Okay, so I don't work with them directly. There have been a few indigo type kids or crystal type kids that I've worked with directly who get it right away. They're really wonderful to work with. But other than that, kind of the age range I work with people directly is maybe 15 to 85, 90. And people find me by word of mouth. And I also have many physicians and therapists that refer people to me. I do all the work on the phone now. So I work with people all over the world. And, I'm quietly here doing my work. And I have never really advertised. I've been booked for 30 years. Without a break.
What are you most passionate about in the work that you do?
The most passionate, I think, is the connection with Mother Earth. If I can help people connect to Mother Earth, it helps them connect to themselves. And then the other work that I'm passionate about now is the work with empaths. I've been doing 2-year programs to help empaths understand the gift of their being. Because I really believe that empaths are a preview of the future of humanity.
I like that idea. So the empaths are a preview of the future of humanity. In what sense?
I believe that we're moving towards a more transparent reality, more connected in oneness reality, and the instantaneous oneness that empaths have with everyone in their life, with all sentient beings, with the entire planet. I mean, there's not an empath that I've ever met where I say to them, do you love everyone? Like, Terri, do you love everyone?
Good question.
In your heart.
Yeah, I think in my heart, yep. I think as I can raise that vibration, I know that there are some struggles with certain people, but I also know the teaching that as I project love, everything shifts.
Right. So there's the immediacy of the people in your life that you may not like at all or you may not love. But is there a general love for humanity?
Yes.
Yes. And that's common among all empaths. Now, if we can instantaneously know what another person is feeling, thinking, and knowing, we are connected in oneness. Everything is transparent. There's nothing to hide. And I believe that we are moving into a world that is going to be operating from this oneness consciousness. And I think empaths are there already. They don't know that they are there. They don't know how to work with their consciousness. But I believe that they are working from the oneness state.
I love that. And I can understand where you're going with that. I really can. And I love that. And I see now, I see so many more programs out there, so many more people talking about empaths. Even some of your best-selling book authors are bringing this subject to light. And so, yeah, I can see that. And as everything is being broken up by our political system, as everything is being shooken up, it's going to take this kind of ability to really break through and know where we are. Yes.
Yes, I find it so interesting that in the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years, the idea of empaths, the understanding of empaths has really come to the foreground, especially in the spiritual world. And before that, we really didn't have a word to describe what was happening. So many people who are empaths were suffering with an identity crisis because every person they were with, they took on their being and their self-identity wasn't solid, wasn't able to be stabilized because they were always feeling other people. So once you have this identifier that you're an empath, and then you understand the definition of an empath, which has just recently come to everyone's consciousness. Once you have that, then you can start finding out who you truly are as compared to all these sensations and all this information that's flooding your being and overwhelming your individuality. So I say that empaths are working from oneness to individuality, whereas non-empaths are working from individuality to oneness. So they're working from, oh, I have this ego, I have to learn how to go beyond the ego to find this place of oneness, where the empath is working from oneness, and I have to figure out how to be an individual human being, find out who I am.
It is all very fascinating. And I think that now we are starting to see the shift between empath, I'm empathic, I'm an empath, being not a good thing to being a very powerful thing. But we have to train and we have to learn it. So I definitely can.
Oh, there's an enormous amount of training that has to go into managing your empathic abilities and your understanding of who you are, because it's like taking this giant gulp of life that's on so many dimensional levels. And I make up this number. I say, like, when an empath is interacting with another person, in 1 second, they're taking in 150 bits of information, whereas the non-empath is maybe taking in 2 bits of information. So the empath is taking in 150 bits of information from every dimension, every level, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and maybe even more. And how are they supposed to digest and integrate and understand all of that information at the same time as someone who's digesting 2 bits of information? It's
yeah. We were talking about this on the last podcast too, about being so wide open and taking in information. It's not that we don't need more information. We need to understand the information we're already taking in, because we are so wide open. That is for sure.
Right. And so that to me is that oneness. I call it the empath merge, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing as quantum physics talks about in terms of being no distance between 2 points. There isn't. When you're an empath, there is no distance between you and another person until you figure out how to be your individual self.
Right. And both have its advantages. Both do. But not understanding them is really important. So you know your energy versus the other. Very fascinating. So, Sarah, what's going on for you? What would you like to share with our listeners?
Well, I'm really feeling that people are needing and wanting a lot of information and a lot of transformation more quickly. And I believe that the setting of the planetary consciousness is making it so that people can transform more quickly than, say, even like 3 years ago, 10 years ago. What I could teach in a weekend used to take me a year to teach someone. So I'm setting up more retreats. I always lead 3 or 4 retreats a year. So I lead retreats in Mount Shasta, in New Mexico, Arizona, different places. And so I'm going to be teaching a couple of retreats left in this year. And the themes of the retreat are the Enlightened Empath program, so that there'll be beginning and advanced enlightened empath retreats. And then there's also the mystical retreats that help people reach deep into their heart and to their multidimensional consciousness. And during those retreats, I help people understand how they're perceiving the subtle world. I think that people need feedback. You know, they have experiences. They're not recognizing that they may be having like sixth sense type of experiences, but they don't know how to recognize them. And so I can give them feedback on what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, how they're experiencing. And so we spend a lot of time in these retreats helping the participants reinforce their subtle energy perception and understanding their particular way of being multidimensional. So they can find this information on my website, which is SpiritHealInstitute.com or SpiritHealOnline.com. And I think you'll have that in the show notes too.
Right. I will definitely link that in the show notes. Those sound fascinating. And I'll have to check out that Silver Springs, New Mexico. I'm looking for a retreat site for my Reiki Mastery retreat. I'm looking for somewhere new to go. Yeah. All right, Sarah, this has been an awesome conversation. We have so many very amazing interests that are lined together and then just different ways of viewing the same thing. I really love it. Let's go back and just kind of round all of this up for our listeners. And coming back to the theme of the show, how would you say that the work that you do as a medical intuitive, working with empaths, help to empower the spirit?
Well, the work that I do helps people go deep. And in a world that is going so crazy fast right now and that is so confusing, I encourage people and support people to stop and turn within and find their own spiritual center. So if they can do that, they can become sovereign, powerful, intuitive, and clear beings. That's my goal.
Beautiful. Excellent. And then from there, be very empowered in all that they do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. Going within, slowing down. It's so needed in our society today. Definitely. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. I have appreciated the conversation and all that you do. Definitely will have the links in the show notes. Thanks for joining us. To your spirit, namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you so much for listening. As a listener on the show, I wanted you to know this first. My event, Intuition as a Decision-Making Tool, is coming up Saturday, October 19th at Forma Arts and Wellness, a morning of networking with other powerful women, learning how to strengthen intuition for decision-making purposes. Gain the confidence and clarity on how you too can be intuitive in your process for making all kinds of decisions. We all have this innate ability. Strengthen yours. Join us in October. Look for the promo code to bring a friend for free as the tickets open up for sale. This is your host, Terri Heiman. To your spirit, namaste.